Hello, and welcome to The Nation. You're joining me, Elaine Noor Abdullah, as I come to you live from my home studio. And today I'll be speaking about the topic of sustainable food systems. Now, in a world of plenty, where enough food is produced to feed everyone on the planet, hunger should be a thing of the past. However, conflict, climate change, disasters, inequality, and most recently the COVID-19 pandemic mean 1 in 9 people globally is still going to bed hungry, and famine looms for millions. So often, one meal at the right time will be enough to make a difference between life and death. Now, about 1/3 of food produced in the world is either lost or wasted. Now, in Malaysia, 3,000 tons of edible food is thrown away each day. This is enough to feed 10 million people every day. No one in Malaysia should suffer from hunger. Today we speak to Syazwan Mokhtar, General Manager of the Lost Food Project, or TLFP, about creating sustainable food systems. Syazwan, thanks for taking the time to join me today on this session, The Nation, right here on Bernama TV. Now let me dive straight into my first question. As I mentioned earlier, according to the World Food Programme, reducing our own food waste can reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also helping to fight hunger. What is your take on this? And how does the Lost Food Project see this?
All right. First of all, thank you for having me, and hi, Lynn. You have the facts right and all that. Basically, what we have currently is a disconnect between, having an abundance of food, enough to feed millions of people globally, and also, in fact, billions of people globally, and also the wastage. You rightly mentioned 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted. I think it is very important to understand that all this food produced in a system which has always been ingrained in a way to kind of to support kind of a certain level of wastage as well. The more mileage we put into the whole system, sending a food from the US to Malaysia, for example, along the way there will always be loss. There will always be food being wasted and all. So having that in mind, we should always think about how to make it a lot more sustainable, how to ensure that there's as less waste as possible. And this also ties itself up into the environmental sustainability aspect. As you mentioned, the greenhouse gas emission. The more that you throw away food to the landfill creates greenhouse gas emission. For example, if we are able to save a kilogram of food, we'll be able to save 2.5 kilogram of greenhouse gas from being emitted to the air. And that's where I think it's very important, and the Lost Food Project comes in order to somewhat become part of the solution, and not entirely the solution. Of course, we do not have the capacity to save all food, even in Malaysia, but we are able to, hopefully, with the operations that we do in rescuing food from manufacturers, suppliers, and so on and so forth, and then redistributing that to the hungry, distribute that to the underprivileged, we should be able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. Distribute food which is still good indeed to people who are in need. The disconnect I mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned as well, and also save the environment from pollution. Coming out from all the landfill toxic waste, especially with food waste, because food waste represents more than 48% of all waste at landfill. So right. I think that's where we are. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about sustainable waste management and redirecting that food surplus that you mentioned earlier to where it is needed. Now, walk us through how you guys at the Lost Food Project achieve these goals.
The waste management, of course, there are different factors and different aspects to it. I mean, what we do is basically to rescue surplus. We do not really like to call it waste per se, because what we do save quality indeed food, food that can still be consumed. It's just that people are not selling it, or people are not buying it, or that it doesn't look nice, and so on. So these are food which are still of good quality, can still be consumed. And what we do is, we work with partners. We work with our partners, from food donors, like, for example, Pasar Burung Kuala Lumpur, from likes of Nestle, Danone, even non-food items like from PNG and Unilever, and so on and so forth. So these partners, they have the same ideas as us in terms of sustainability. They want all these items to not go to waste, to not be thrown away to the landfill. At the same time, we want to work with partners on the ground, the NGOs, the charities, the parliamentarians, local governments who are already doing the good work, feeding the hungry. So we are a network of same like-minded individuals. We as the Lawsuit Project, we coordinate this effort either with our corporate partners, food donors, together with our NGOs and on-ground partners for distribution. So that's how we kind of build our system in order to kind of reach out to more people, and we've been able to reach to 8 to 10,000 people on a weekly basis with this system.
Really nice. Now, according to the World Food Programme, around, I mentioned earlier, 1/3 of the food produced for human consumption is either lost or wasted. Now, this amounts to a huge financial loss annually as well. Now, in your point of view, how do consumers contribute to food wastage, and how can this be avoided? What's a better way?
If you look at the data, you mentioned the 3,000 tons being wasted. In fact, this year, SW Corp came out with another study that says we are wasting 4,000 tons on a daily basis. The consumers in this aspect plays probably the biggest part of wasting food, because if you look also at the data, most of the wasted food comes from households, right? Even more than restaurants, even more than industry players, the night markets, the bazaars, and so on and so forth. This is because every individual at every household in Malaysia somehow contributes to waste. And Malaysia, compared to global average, we produce more waste at 1.6 kilo per person compared to the global average of 1.2 kilogram per person. So, the consumer behavior kind of promotes this and encourages this. If we are able to kind of to fix or to shift our dynamics a bit with regard to waste, how we view surplus, how we view food, and how we value them, then we should be able to also change the mindset of the industries. Because the industry, of course, they want to optimize their business practices as well, not to overproduce. For example, if they overproduce, then they are wasting their own resources and money and so on and so forth. So consumers have a very important role, and that's why we always say, if you are able to save food, conserve food, you should be doing it.
What at this point of time, as in, what are the immediate things, say for example, the consumer that's watching this, that can do to immediately change those habits and make a difference?
First of all, if you look at food, you're always looking at the pretty ones, right? You don't see the one with what deformed as good food. This is not true. They contain the same level of nutrition. They are still good to eat. If the vegetable next to it is delicious, this one is as delicious as well. You can cook it so many different ways. You can always look at zero waste initiative, to conserve all this food. If you have leafy vegetables that's already looking like it's a real thing, find ways to turn it into like pesto sauce or freeze it in cubes or cook it immediately. Try not to waste food. Try not to throw away, because resources that are used to produce all this food, whether it's vegetables, poultry, meat, even a 1 kilogram of meat uses about 15,000 liters of water to produce. So imagine throwing away 1 kilogram of meat, how many waters we are wasting. So, having all these things in mind, at the same time looking out there, looking at people who are hungry, do not have access to food, with cases of food insecurity at their household, we should be able to kind of have a bit more awareness. And if we are in a position of privilege, then definitely we should be able to think about how we can change our kind of consumption culture as well.
Now, I think you said it rightly. We have to rise above that shallow view that we have of what's pretty, what's not, what's edible, what's not. And I think there are a lot of movements that talk about trying to use every part of whatever animals that you actually consuming. So you're using parts that have not traditionally been seen as edible items, and then making full use of it as well. So my next question, your website states that TLFP has rescued over 8 million meals since you started up till August. Do share with us some insights on how food items are donated or received by your organization, and what are some criteria that you're looking for in this aspect?
Okay, so the Lawsuit Project works non-traditionally in a sense where we don't actually cook meals and provide meals on the ground. We have partners doing that as well. So we view our system as a network. Again, we are the hub as coordinator. We have partners that are providing us raw ingredients, whether it's vegetables, like for example, the one we collect from Pasar Borong KL. The vendors give their vegetables to us. At the end of the day, if they are not able to sell and all, we can collect between 1.5 to 3 tons in a single day, just just vegetables. If not, if we don't collect, they're going to throw it away. The likes of the manufacturers and the suppliers, they provide us items which are still in date again, but they want to clear stock. They want a new stock to come in, so the old stock they provide to us. And what we do is we redistribute all these items, whether it's perishable items or dry goods and all. We provide them to partners, the NGOs and the charities who are already doing the good work. They're already caring for the homeless, already caring for orphanages and so on and so forth. So what we look is, of course, when we look for partners, we look for them, for the food partners. We look for people who are able to give us their surplus, and we're not asking for ready-made food and so on and so forth. We're not looking for those things. If you have surplus, come contact us. We are able to kind of handle the end part of your operations. We are able to handle your waste, so to say, but again, we like to call it waste.
Essentially, we're just linking and redistributing what could potentially just end up in a landfill to perhaps end up on a plate to feed someone for the day.
Correct.
Now, in my final question, what is your message to the viewers and Malaysians as a whole on being responsible and maintaining a sustainable food cycle? What does it look like?
Okay. First of all, we need to realize that what we do and what we're experiencing now with regard to the pandemic has and will always be connected to how we conduct ourselves. So we clear land. We get rid of animals from their habitats, right? To make room for farming and so on and so forth. But again, as you mentioned, 1/3 of those that is farmed, 1/3 of those food that is produced never gets to the table. Never gets eaten for dinner, lunch, and breakfast, and so on and so forth. When we clear this land, and the study shows that we clear about 1.4 billion hectares of land, which involves the lost food, meaning that 1.4 billion hectares of land is cleared without actually the production being consumed. That means that we are creating and we are disrupting the biodiversity, we are disrupting the habitats of animal and creating all this mess that we're experiencing right now. So we should definitely be aware of this. We should be more responsible with what we consume and how we consume and what we throw away and so on and so forth, because we are contributing to not only the pandemic but our sustainable future for future generations and so on and so forth. So again, be a lot more responsible with regard to how we look at food. Yeah, consume food, and we love our food. I know we think about
Malaysians.
food all the time. Yeah, Malaysians especially. But think about whether or not we actually value our food if we keep throwing them away. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've run out of time, Syazwan. Thanks for the work that you do at the Lost Food Project, and we really hope that people are a little bit more conscious and change some habits that would contribute towards a better future and reducing the landfill and wastage of food. And we were speaking to Syazwan Mokhtar, of course, General Manager of the Lost Food Project, on the topic of sustainable food systems. Thanks, Syazwan. Now, hunger is still one of the biggest and most solvable problems in the world. Incredible progress has already been made, and there are over 300 million fewer hungry people now than back in the 90s. It is possible to end hunger. Now, TFFP currently rescues an average of 10 tons of food per week from going to that landfill. There are plans to rescue much more, but everyone needs to play their part in being aware of the problem and understanding the solution. Once again, thanks for joining me on The Nation. I'm Elaine Norbla. Bye.